Hello, ladies and gentlemen. My name is David L., and I'm your host of Spiritual Progress. Let's talk about why we're here. Now, I'm not talking about why am I on the computer and you're sitting there listening to me. What I'm talking about is why are we all on this planet? I don't know about you, but I had this belief that I'd never really looked at. And that belief was that I was created at birth. I started at birth. I'd never existed before birth. And that I was here through no choice of my own. Actually, by default, God created me then. He didn't ask me if I wanted to be created. I didn't volunteer. And that I lived this life. And then when I died, I either went to heaven if I'd been good, or I went to hell if I hadn't. And so I was trying to get through life with the minimum amount of stress, the most comfort I could. Just trying to get through it. And then something traumatic happened in my life that made me question all of those assumptions that I'd made. My favorite mother-in-law died. Now, she was my only mother-in-law, but she was my favorite. Loved her dearly. I always introduced her as my favorite mother-in-law because if I'd had others, she still would have been my favorite. And when she died, it was traumatic. For me, for my wife, and the whole family. And it made us all look at death. Just what happens. And so I started reading books on people who had had what were called near-death experiences. And also people who were having experiences as they were about to die. People who were terminally ill, that type of thing. And I found that no matter which author I read, and I read dozens of those books, I probably read 30 of those books, and it didn't matter who wrote the book or who they were interviewing, there seemed to be some common themes that showed up. And a couple of those themes were that, number one, we existed in heaven long before we were born. And I was like, I never thought of that. That's not what I've heard in church. And it was like, I have to think about that one. And then they talked about what would happen when they died. And a lot of people talked about going through a life review. And I was like, life review? And they were like, I was assuming it was judgment day. I'd stand before God who would look at everything bad I'd done and That wasn't what they talked about. They talked about reviewing their own life, judging their own life. And I was like, really? And it was amazing. This common theme that came out of the life review was, what did you learn? Did you learn to love others? And did you help others? Were you of service? And I was like, wow. And the common thing was, and really, I existed before I came here. And they talked about planning their life. And I was like, really? And it was like, it dawned on me that, is it possible that I volunteered for this life? And that not only did I volunteer for this life, that I volunteered to go through some experiences to learn some things. And it was like, wow, so I'm not necessarily a victim who came here through no choice of his own. I volunteered. It changed my perspective on everything. No, I don't know about you, but I was kind of one of those people who was, if it's not in the Bible, it doesn't exist. So started looking through the Bible, trying to see, is it possible that what these people are talking about in these near-death experiences agrees with what's in the Bible? And I started to find some things. In one scripture it says that I knew you before you were born. Now that's kind of strange. If I was created at birth, how could God have known me before I was born? Maybe I did exist before I was born. Maybe my soul wasn't created at birth. Maybe I existed before this birth. That changed my attitude. Is it possible that I volunteered to come into this life, to experience the things I'm going through? And when that possibility popped into my mind for the first time ever, it changed my perspective on everything I go through in life. See, I started looking back and I started hearing those questions that people had answered in these life reviews and the judgments they'd made on their own lives. And I'm really going, what have I learned? And I started looking back on my life and all of the troubles and trials and tribulations that I'd gone through. I had learned spiritual lessons as a result. And I was like, really? It changed my attitude about going through trials and tribulations. Now, I'm like you, and I don't know about you, but I still don't enjoy going through them. I do like being comfortable. I like low stress. But what happened is that coming to this mindset, this frame of mind that maybe I volunteered for this life, took away the misery. I still go through the learning process. I still, it's like learning to ride a bicycle. You still fall off occasionally. But it's not a miserable experience. And so I started looking at my life again and then learning to I started looking at other people in a different light. People who are angry and cranky and difficult to deal with. I started looking at them and going, maybe the purpose in my life is to learn to love people who aren't real lovable. And when I considered that possibility, I was like, maybe that's the purpose. And when I started seeing a purpose in my life, and I started seeing the value in learning spiritual lessons and taking things from a heavenly perspective, all of a sudden, life was more enjoyable. That the tough times weren't miserable. They were tough, they were a challenge, but not miserable. Depression went away. I still have bad days, but they're nowhere near as bad as they used to be. And so considering the possibility that you volunteered for life, that you chose the life you're leading, and that you chose to go through the trials and tribulations you are going through to learn spiritual lessons that you will take with you throughout all eternity, consider the possibility. I'm not telling you that's what it is. Consider the possibility. And when I became open to that, it opened my eyes up. And the peace that passeth all understanding showed up on me. And so I hope you will consider the possibilities. Thanks, and have a good day.